Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Last time I think we spoke about verses
21 and 22.
21 and 22, yes. This 23, which we're going to talk about today, is a continuation of that. So just pick up the thread again. I'll just quickly read the meaning of 21 and 22. 21 contains a question, but Rama put to his guru Vashishta. So the meaning of the verse is, to Rama who asked, in what great mirror all these appear in front as a shadow, say, what is that which is indicated as that heart for all sentient beings in this world? In other words, he's asking, what is the heart? And the heart he describes as the great mirror in which all these appear in front as a shadow. Vashishta Muni says, when considering the heart of for all sentient beings in this world is of two kinds. And then in 22, Vashishta goes on to say, what are the two kinds of heart? Listen to the nature of these two, which are what is fit to accept and what is fit to reject. In other words, one is fit to accept and the other is fit to reject. The organ situated as heart in a place inside the chest of the measurable body is what is fit to reject. In other words, that isn't the real heart. That isn't the heart when the term heart is used in a spiritual sense. The heart is not any part of the body, except within the heart, that the heart in the form of the one awareness is what is fit to accept. That is both inside and outside, and it is not what is inside outside. In other words, it is omnipresent, so it is both inside and outside, but it is beyond the duality of a pair of opposites, inside and outside. So it is both immanent in everything and it is transcendent. It is beyond beyond everything. So in verse 23, what Vashishta goes on to say, so in verse 22, he was talking about the heart, which is the heart in the form of the one awareness. So he goes on to describe that heart in verse 23. He begins by saying, Aduve Mukhya Ideyam. That is the principal heart. Mukhya means principal, first, foremost, primary, and preeminent. So that's the heart we have to be concerned about. But that is the heart we need to investigate. Not any part of the physical body, but maybe called heart. That's my comment on that. That is all what Vashishta says, Aduve Mukhya Ideyam. That is the principal heart. And then he goes on to say, Adankan if akilammume amandu irakum. In it, this entire universe is residing. So all phenomena exist in this heart, is the implication. Adu adi eporukum. It is the mirror for all things whatsoever. Here he's referring back to the question of Rama, which was Rama was asking about the heart, which is the mirror for all things. This mirror analogy that is used here is parallel to an analogy that Bhagavan often used, which was the analogy of the cinema screen. In the days of Rama and Vashishta, there were no cinemas, so the closest the most apt analogy in their days was a mirror in which all things appear. But those things appear in the mirror, those things that appear in a mirror are just an appearance. They're not real. You may see a fire in a mirror, but the fire isn't going to burn you. You may see food in the mirror, but that food is not going to satisfy your hunger. You may see water in the mirror, but that food is not going to quench that water is not going to quench your thirst. So just like whatever is seen in a mirror is just an appearance and has no substantive reality. Likewise, whatever appears on a screen in a cinema is just an appearance. It has no reality. As Bhagavan often used to say, a wild forest fire may be projected on the screen, but it's not going to burn the screen. A great flood may be projected on the screen, but it's not going to wet the screen. So it's all just an appearance. So this, like the cinema screen analogy, the mirror analogy, implies that whatever appears in it is not real. What is real is the mirror, not whatever appears in the mirror. So in that sense, the heart is the mirror for all things. So everything appears in the heart, but what is real is only the heart, not anything that appears in heart. Whatever appears and disappears is unreal. And when Bhagavan talks about real and unreal, he's not directly talking about it here, but he's implying it. What he means by real is what actually exists, whereas what is unreal is what doesn't actually exist, even if it seems to exist. So all phenomena, all things whatsoever, as he referred to here, all objects, though they appear to exist, they do not actually exist. They're just a mental fabrication, just like everything we see in a dream seems to exist so long as we're dreaming, but it doesn't actually exist. It's a mere mental fabrication. So there's a lot of implication in the analogies that are used. So there's, as with all of Bhagavan's works and all of Bhagavan's verses and his writings, and also more generally spiritual writings, there's a lot, there's the plain meaning of the verse, but we have to see behind the meaning to see all the implied meaning. So there's a lot of implied meaning here, as in all of Bhagavan's verses. And then he says, Ella salvanga kum aduve illam. That means it is the home or the abode for all riches. Here, riches or implies, it's not obviously not referring to material riches, it implies spiritual riches. In other words, everything of value, everything that is real, this is the abode of it. And everything that is real is only this awareness, actually. So it is the abode for itself. But we can say all spiritual qualities and everything, this is the abode, this is the source of them, this is where they always reside. So if we feel we're lacking in qualities, good qualities, those good qualities are ever present in our heart. But we seem to be lacking them because instead of looking within, we're looking outwards. So we need to look back within. We need to turn our awareness back on itself, so to speak. We need to face ourself alone. And there we will find all riches, all spiritual qualities, all clarity, love, everything of value is there in the heart. Nothing of value is to be found outside, because everything outside is a mere reflection on the mirror. It's not, it has no, whatever is reflected in the mirror serves no purpose. As I say, Food that is reflected in a mirror is not going to satisfy our hunger. Water that is reflected in a mirror is not going to quench our thirst. So whatever we see outwardly is never going to satisfy us. But true satisfaction, true happiness can be found only within our heart. And then he goes on to say, Adanale anetu viacum arivu adu idiom ena ariel ahum. That means, therefore it, the awareness for all sentient beings, is what is declared to be the heart. Actually, I could have put it alone, but he says aduvei. A is an intensifying suffix, which in this context implies alone. Therefore, it, the heart, therefore it, the awareness for all sentient beings, alone is what is declared to be the heart. In other words, this alone is the real heart. Not the fleshy organ that pumps blood around the body or any other part of the body. That is not the real heart. The real heart is only this fundamental awareness I am. And then he finally says, Sidea Nikum Kalpol Jada Udalin Avaya Vatu or Siru Kuru Andrew. That means it is not a small portion in a part of the perishable stone-like insentient body. That is, he described the body as Sidea Nikum. That means it is perishable. It's mortal. This body is not going to last. We all know that this body that is born is one day going to die. It has no endurance. It's just a fleeting appearance, and it is. He describes it as Kalpol Jada Udal, the stone-like insentient body. That is, it's insentient like a stone. It has no awareness at all. So no part of this body is the real heart. The real heart is only the fundamental awareness I am. So then what is the practical implication of this? That is what these verses assert, is that awareness alone is the real heart. So how are we to apply this understanding in practice? That is what is explained by Bhagavan in this verse 24. As I say, these are all a series of verses. They're all translated from the Yoga Vasishtha, part 5, chapter 78. So the last verse in this series that Bhagavan translated is this verse 24. What he says in this verse is, it's all one sentence. Adalinal, therefore, arivu mayam am sudha ideate ahate sekum sadhanayal vardane galodu vayu odukume saram tane. What that means is, therefore, by means of fixing the mind in the pure heart, which is composed of awareness, complete dissolution of breath along with inclinations will be achieved automatically. Why is the dissolution of the breath and dissolution of the vasanas achieved by fixing the mind in the heart? Because the root of both the breath and the vasanas is ego. That is, whose vasanas are they? They're ego's vasanas. This body seems to be living. It seems to have breath because of the presence of ego. So when ego is destroyed, everything that sprouts from ego is destroyed along with it. That is, as Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, Ahande undayin anatam undahum. If ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. Ahande indrail indru anatam. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. Ahande yavamam. Ego itself is everything. Adalal yadu idu entru nadale overdal yavamena or. Therefore, know that investigating what this is giving up everything. This is a very, very important verse. This is one of the key principles of Bhagavan's teachings. Why does everything depend? Why does everything come into existence only when ego comes into existence? And why does everything not exist when ego doesn't exist? Here, everything refers to all phenomena. In other words, the entire world, and not only the world of physical objects, also the world of mental objects, or all phenomena of any kind whatsoever, exist only in the view of ego. So without ego, there are no phenomena. Only when ego rises do phenomena appear. When ego is dissolved, phenomena are dissolved along with it. We can see this from our own experience. In waking and dream, we have risen and are dancing about as ego. Consequently, we're aware of phenomena. In sleep, ego is dissolved and all phenomena are dissolved along with it. So phenomena have no existence independent of ego, in whose view they seem to exist, because they're just an appearance. So there cannot be an appearance without something in whose view it appears. All appearances appear only in the view of ego. So everything depends upon ego for its seeming existence. That's why he says, Ahande yavamam. Ego itself is everything, because nothing has any existence, no phenomena have any existence independent of ego. Just like when we're dreaming, the dreaming mind sees itself as the entire dream world. So we as ego are, likewise, we as ego are seeing ourselves as all this world. So everything is only ego, according to Bhagavan. And then he says, therefore, investigating what it is giving up everything. Investigating what it is, or what this is, literally, means investigating what ego is. If we investigate ego, ego will subside. And when ego subsides, everything else will subside along with it. That ego will subside, and if we investigate it keenly enough, it will dissolve forever back into its source. And when ego dissolves, everything else dissolves along with it. So that is what is implied here, that by this means of fixing the mind in the pure heart. The pure heart is awareness, the fundamental awareness I am. So fixing the mind in the heart means fixing our attention on ourself. By fixing our attention on ourself, who are awareness, complete dissolution of ego will be achieved, and because ego is dissolved, the breath and the vasanas will be dissolved along with it. There can be no vasanas or breath or body or anything in the absence of ego. So in this series of verses, 21, 22, 23, 24, Bhagavan is putting in perspective what he had said earlier in verses 18 and 19. Verses 18 and 19 were a translation from a Malayalam version of an Ayurvedic medical text called Ashtanga Hridaya. That is that is Ashtanga. Ayurveda is supposed to have 8 limbs, so it's called Ashtanga Ayurveda, and the heart of those 8 limbs is what is given in this work, Ashtanga Hridayam. So it's a core medical text. It summarizes the essence of certain earlier texts. So it's one of the classical texts of Ayurveda. There's a Malayalam version of it, and in the Malayalam version of it, Bhagavan found 2 verses. The reason he translated these verses is because Bhagavan often used to talk about the heart, but he made it very clear when he's talking about the heart means the center. What is the center? Of course, we use the term heart, to refer in many different senses. In the most materialistic sense, the word heart refers to the blood pumping organism, blood pumping organ in the body. That's the crudest and most physical level. That's the meaning of heart. But we also use heart to mean, for example, the seat of emotions are often referred to as heart. The will is often referred to as heart. Sometimes the intellect is referred to as heart. An old-fashioned meaning of the word heart is memory. In earlier times, one of the meaning of heart was memory. And that meaning has died out in English now, but it survives only in the expression learning by heart. Learning by heart means learning by memory. So the reason all these different mental faculties are referred to as heart is because heart means the center. And obviously the mind the mind and all its faculties is the center of this body, so to speak. The center of our identity. We identify ourselves as the body, but when we identify ourselves as the body, we don't just identify ourselves as a physical form of the body, but as the mind and intellect and will that are operating within that body. So the mind, intellect, and will are the heart of the body. That's one sense in which the word heart is used. And in Tamil, words that mean heart, one word that means heart is ullam. Ullam means both mind and heart. Likewise with aham. Aham also means what is inside, so it can refer to the mind or to the heart. So heart, in its metaphorical or figurative sense, heart doesn't have one specific meaning. So we can say that the heart of the mind is ego, because the heart of all experience is ego, because ego is the experiencer. Without ego, there can be no experience. So the center of all experience is ego. So ego is the heart in a certain sense. So what Bhagavan describes in verses 18 and 19 is with reference to the body. So the heart that has a location in the body is not the ultimate heart, is not the spiritual heart, it is ego. That's why it is described in those 2 verses. In verse 18, it said, between the 2 breasts, below the chest and above the stomach, there are 6 things. The colors are various. That implies their colors are various. Among these, one thing resembling a water lily bud, and which is inside 2 digits to the right, is the heart. But then in 19, he goes on to describe this thing that is like a lily bud. Its mouth is closed. Inside is a tiny hole. In it, dense darkness exists, residing along with desire and so on. All the major nadis exist adhering to it. It is the abode of breath, mind, and light. Light here implies awareness. but not the ultimate awareness, but awareness of phenomena. So this metaphorical description of the heart is how ego is often described. When it is said its mouth is closed, that implies it's a water lily. It's a water lily bud. It's not a blossom flower. It's still in the form of a bud. It's not yet blossomed. This is how ego is often described in poetry, particularly in devotional poetry. Bhagavan prays for in Aksharamlai and Arunachya Pancharatnam and elsewhere, Bhagavan prays for the blossoming of the heart. That means blossoming of ego. The blossoming of ego means it opens up. It allows the light of grace to consume it. When a flower opens, it opens its face to the sun. That means when we turn our attention within, we are and look within deep enough, we will thereby blossom by seeing the sun of pure awareness that is ever shining in our heart. In other words, we'll be swallowed by that sun. So these are all metaphorical descriptions. So this metaphorical description here in 19 is clearly a metaphorical description, not of the ultimate heart, but only of ego. It's only ego that can be described as having its mouth being closed, and inside it there's dense darkness residing along with desire and so on. This is all a description of ego. So ego is heart in one sense, that the word heart means center, and center is a relative term. So what is the heart of ego? Ego is the adjunct conflated awareness, I am this body. So the ultimate heart, the heart of ego, is the pure awareness I am. So when all adjuncts are removed, what remains, that is the pure awareness I am. That is the heart of ego. So that is the ultimate heart. So what Bhagavan is talking about in these verses 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24, the heart he's talking about there is this ultimate heart, which is not a part of the body. So these four verses, 21 to 24, are a corrective of what is said in verse 18 and 19. The reason Bhagavan translated these verses 18 and 19 from Malayalam is as I said, when Bhagavan often talked about the heart, but when he talked about the heart, he was referring to our real nature, what we actually are. However, among his disciples, or his devotees in the early days, there were some whose mind was very outward going, and they were much attached to yoga and tantra and all sorts of outward forms of spirituality. So when Bhagavan talked about the heart, they asked him, is the heart you're talking about the same as the Anahata chakra? The Anahata chakra is the heart chakra, one of the 6 or 7 chakras, whatever, in the body. And Bhagavan said, no. Then where in the body is it located? Bhagavan said, it is the pure awareness. It doesn't have a location in the body. But they insisted on wanting to know a location in the body. So Bhagavan finally said, relative to the body, the heart is said to be two digits to the right from the center of the chest. Why? Because that is the point we all point at when we refer to ourselves. And we can also observe, for example, if we suddenly get a shock or something, we will feel a sensation there, 2 digits to the right from the center of the chest. For example, supposing there's suddenly a loud explosion nearby, we get a shock. And we feel that if we observe it, we can observe that we feel something in the 2 digits to the right from the center of the chest. Any sudden noise or anything that gives us a sudden shock. We also talk about being broken-hearted. If if some great calamity happens, someone who is very, very dear to us suddenly passes away or something, we actually feel a pain in the heart. That's why we have this term broken-hearted. So it's all referring, because this point, 2 digits right from the center of the chest, is where all our emotions and everything, where we experience them as being centered. And as Bhagavan said, when we refer to ourselves, we all naturally point to our chest to refer to ourselves. And Bhagavan used to say, if someone asks, who will go and who will run and fetch the mail from the post office, for example, a boy will say, I will do it, and he will point at his chest. He won't point at his legs and say, I will run and get it. He'll point to his chest, I will run and get it. Likewise, if a group of boys are asked, who knows the answer to this sum, some mathematical sum or something, the one who first can work out the answer will say, I know the answer. They'll point at the chest. They won't point at the head. So this is where, in relation to this body, where we feel ourselves to be centered. So it is true at a certain level, but only in relation to the body. And so long as we're identified with this body, that is the point in the body that we feel ourselves to be centered. Likewise, in dream, it's not this body we experience as I, it's some other body. But in dream, if we refer to ourselves, we point to the body that we take as ourself, and we point to the chest. So there is truth in this. Heart, 2 digits right from the center of the chest, but this is only relative to the body. And the self that is relative to the body is only ego. What we actually are has no connection with the body whatsoever. That is, it is, of course, the mirror in which the body and all other phenomena appear. So it's the underlying reality of everything, but there's no direct connection. That's why in verse 24 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, Bhagavan says, the Jada Udal Nanenadu, that is the insentient body does not say I. In other words, the insentient body is not aware of itself as I. Why is it not aware of itself as I? Because it's Jada, it's not aware. So obviously it's not aware of itself as I. Satchit Uḍḍiyadu, being awareness doesn't rise. But in between, one thing I rises as the extent of a body. That one thing I that rises as the extent of a body, he goes on to say Chit Jadagranti, ego, etc. So ego is that which metaphorically speaking appears between the body and Satchit. Satchit is the heart, is the real heart, the ultimate heart. So ego is the link between Satchit and the heart. So there's no direct, that is, in the view of Satchit, there is only Satchit, nothing but Satchit. So there's no such thing as body. So the body exists only in the view of ego. So the place in the body that is said to be the heart is true only from the perspective of ego, not from the perspective of Satchit. So that is not the ultimate heart. The ultimate heart, that is, ego is the heart relative to all phenomena. But the heart of ego, the ultimate heart, is the pure awareness I am. That is what Bhagavan is talking about in these verses. So in verses 21 to 24, he's talking about heart in the ultimate meaning of the sense, the ultimate center, the center of all centers. And one other thing about the heart, a very interesting thing, if we pay close attention to what Bhagavan says, for example, in verse 2 of Aranacya Pancharatnam, he says, Nityamum nan endru idea nadituvei al unper tan idiom endriduvatam. What that means is, since you always dance in the heart as I, they say your name is heart. So here Bhagavan is saying, he's addressing Arunachala. So Arunachala is dancing in the heart as I, so his name is heart. So in other words, he's saying Arunachala is both what is in the heart, namely I, and it is the heart. So isn't there, superficially it may seem there's a slight inconsistency. Is Arunachala in the heart or is it the heart? What we have to understand from this is that Arunachala, which is pure awareness, the awareness that is talked about in these verses, is the ultimate heart. The heart, the word heart means the center. If anything other than the heart existed in the heart, that other thing would be the heart of the heart. But in the ultimate heart, what exists in the ultimate heart is only the heart itself. No other thing exists there. So the I, the Arunachala is shining in the heart as I, therefore he is the heart. That means Arunachala, or I, is the ultimate heart. It's the heart of all other hearts. So there's no, it cannot be reduced any further. So what is in the heart, that is, I is the heart, and what is in the heart is only the heart, nothing other than the heart. So this is the ultimate heart. This is what Bhagavan is talking about in this verse, the ultimate heart. So as I say, the word heart, it's a relative term. We use the word heart to refer to emotions, will. We use it in so many different, in different sense, in different contexts. But what he's talking about here in these verses 21 to 24 is what is the ultimate heart. The ultimate heart is not anything, any part of this body. The ultimate heart is only this fundamental awareness I am, which is the great mirror in which all other things appear. It is, as he says, it is the awareness for all sentient beings. It is the abode of all riches, and the abode of everything of value. It is the mirror of all things. So this is this awareness, this fundamental awareness I am. This alone is the real heart. So when Bhagavan talks about heart, of course we need to understand from the context what he means, because sometimes he uses the word heart to refer to mind or whatever. But generally, when he's talking about heart, he's referring to this ultimate heart, which is the pure, which is Satchit, the pure being awareness, the one thing that actually exists. Ekam eva advaityam, one only without a second. Atma-swarupa, as he says in paragraph 7 of Nana. Yatatamai Uḻḷadu Atma-swarupamandre. What actually exists is only Atma-swarupa. That is the heart. So does anyone have any questions about this?
Thank you, Michael. So just want to read a question from one of our colleagues who wishes to be anonymous. So he first quotes two of the Guru Ashoka verses, 195 and 345, from your translation. So 195, I'm going to read it first. Know that you are the perfect shining light, which not only makes the existence of God's kingdom possible, but also allows it to be seen as a wonderful heaven. To know this alone is jnana. Therefore, the kingdom of God is within you. Then he quotes the next, then he quotes Guru Ashoka, verse 345. For those who have known without delusion, the truth of God, how he resides and shines within as a soul of the soul, even the presence of a worm, which is usually rejected by others, will shine as the beloved presence of the Supreme Lord. And then he comes to his questions. 1, what is heaven? 2, who sees it? 3, can a worm appear in heaven?
Heaven, in the usual sense of the word, heaven is some higher world that we will go to after we leave this bodily our life in this present body. If we virtuous in this lifetime, if we acquire enough punya, or if we do enough good deeds, we will go to heaven to reap the rewards of our good deeds. Different religions have different concepts of heaven. Generally, in Abrahamic religions, they consider heaven to be eternal. So if you you only have one life. If you behave yourself in your one life, you go to heaven. If you don't behave yourself, you go to hell. That's the end of it. It's a bit of a so this is the only chance we've got, so we better behave ourselves. That is the Abrahamic view, the general view in Abrahamic religions. But in the Dharmic religions, that's where religions of Indian origin, like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, and so on, the idea of heaven, that is whatever we do, whatever good we do is finite. So whatever reward we experience will also be finite. So heaven is not eternal. Heaven is just a temporary place where we go to enjoy the fruits of our karma. And there's not just one heaven. In Hinduism, generally, and I think also in other Dharmic religions, they talk about 7 heavens. The highest is Brahmaloka. The ordinary heaven, Swarga, is the lowest of all. That's just the abode of Indra and all the devas, all the divine beings. And there's also heavens. If you're a Shiva devotee, you go to Kailasha. Kailasha is a type of heaven where you're with Shiva. If you're a Vishnu devotee, you go to Vaikuntha. Or if you're a Krishna devotee, you may prefer to go to Goloka rather than Vaikuntha. So many, all these are different conceptions they have. But ultimately, it's just whatever we do, we reap the fruit of those. We reap the fruit of our past actions in our afterlife, and that may be in a heaven-like world, or it may be in a hell-like world, or it may be in this world. These are all relative. These are all beliefs that people have, but ultimately, what is real? If this present world is real, heaven and hell may also be real. But is this present world real? We can say this present world seems to exist, but does it actually exist? Does it have any existence independent of our perception of it? According to Bhagavan, it has no existence independent of our perception of it. So that's why I don't have it here. What can you read 195 again?
Know that you are the perfect shining light, which not only makes the existence of God's kingdom possible, but also allows it to be seen as a wonderful heaven.
Right, okay.
To know this alone is jnana.
Yeah, Bhagavan is clearly indicating heaven, like this world, is something that seems to exist only in the view of ego. What we actually are is not ego. It is what is referred to there as the perfect shining light is the light of pure awareness. The light of pure awareness is the light that illumines ego, enabling ego to know all other things. So any world, whether this world or Swaga, heaven, or any Vaikuntha, Kailasha, Goloka, or even up to Brahmaloka is supposed to be the highest. All these higher worlds are all the lower worlds. They're also supposed to be seven different hells or something. All these exist only in the view of ego. As Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, if ego comes into existence, everything comes into existence. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. That everything includes heaven, hell, and whatever type of world we can conceive. It all exists only in the view of ego. And ego is illumined by the light of pure awareness. That is, in pure awareness, none of these things, no phenomena appear. But ego, it's only in the view of ego that all these things appear, all these different worlds appear. But ego is able to see these different worlds only by the light that it derives from that pure awareness. So ego is sometimes described as Chidabhasa. Chidabhasa is generally translated as reflected awareness. Abhasa actually means likeness or a semblance. So if you look in a mirror, the face you see in the mirror is not actually your face. It is a likeness of your face. So in that sense, the basic meaning of abhasa is a likeness or a semblance. In other words, it's not real, it just appears to be so. And a secondary meaning is a reflection, in the sense that a reflection is a likeness of what is reflected. So ego is not, why it is called a semblance of awareness, it is not real awareness, because ego is what Bhagavan often referred to as sutarivu. That means transitive awareness. It's an awareness that is aware of objects or phenomena. If those objects or phenomena actually existed, we could say awareness of them is real awareness. But objects and phenomena do not actually exist. They only seem to exist. So knowing what doesn't actually exist as if it actually exists is not real awareness. It's only a likeness of awareness. So ego is not the real awareness. It's not the original awareness. The original awareness is pure awareness. That is what Bhagavan is referring to there when he says, you are the perfect shining light. It's that pure awareness. So without that pure awareness, ego couldn't be aware of anything. That is, ego shines only by the light of that pure awareness. Ego is, so to speak, a reflection of that light of pure awareness. So, yeah, that's why he said there, you're the perfect shining light. And knowing that perfect shining light as it is jnana. Therefore, the kingdom of God is within you. That is, you can know that perfect shining light only by turning your attention back within. When we turn our attention back within, if we turn our attention within deeply enough, in other words, if we, so to speak, turn a full 180 degrees away from all phenomena, back towards ourselves, the light of awareness, we as ego will dissolve. So in order to experience the kingdom of heaven as it actually is, and here heaven doesn't mean heaven in the sense of an external world. Here, kingdom of heaven in that sense means the kingdom of God, the abode of God, Parandharma, as it is sometimes called, the ultimate abode, the supreme abode. That is nothing but the state of pure awareness, which we can experience only by turning our attention back within to see who am I. Sorry, what were the questions again? There were three questions, and I don't know.
Yeah, the three questions. What is heaven? You answered it. Who sees it? Second question.
Well, who sees it? Who sees anything is only ego.
No.
Who sees anything other than itself is only ego. Because what we actually are is pure awareness. And what pure awareness sees is only pure awareness. In other words, pure awareness does not see anything other than itself. So what sees anything other than itself is only ego.
Finally, can a worm appear in heaven?
Well, if a worm can appear in this world, why shouldn't it appear in heaven? Maybe it's a heavenly worm.
Well, there are examples of animals, achieving jnana, right? I mean, Lakshmi.
Well, yeah, but in jnana you don't go to heaven. In jnana
exactly,
you
right,
go beyond
that.
all
Yeah,
world.
beyond that.
But if we experience worms in this world, we may experience worms in heaven and worms in hell. Who knows?
Exactly, right. It's possible.
All this, everything is possible in the mind, because the mind can create anything and delude itself that what it has created is real. But none of these things are real. What is real is only that shining light of awareness, I am.
Right.
Everything else is a mental fabrication. It exists only it's projected by the mind and appears only in the view of the mind. Mind here means ego.
Good. Thank you, Michael. So there's a question from Saravana Pawan. He's actually emailed me a while ago. I don't know if he had a chance to ask you in any of the sessions in between, but assuming he didn't, so I'll go ahead and summarize this question for you. In my understanding, the Sahaja Samadhi is, as Michael explains in other talks, permanent and staying in the real nature of Brahman, not coming back to the sense of body and world. Venkatraman went to that stage at the time of turning within and merged in that stage. However, when he was in the Padala Lingam in the Mandapam and children were throwing stones, he didn't get distracted. There were insects biting him. It did not affect him. From this observation, can you explain about the stages of Sahaja Samadhi? In other words, what he's asking is there a thing like superficial, moderate, or deep absorption? So I'll let you take over.
Okay. In the view of Yonloka, perhaps, that is, they talk about four different states of jnana: Brahma Vid, Brahma Varya, Brahma Varishta, Brahma Vid Varya, something I can't remember. There are four terms. These are all these differences are differences in the view of the onlooker. Bhagavan, all these states were seen in Bhagavan at different stages in his life. That is, after when he came to Tiruvannamalai and was sitting in Patalingam, he was completely oblivious to the world, in our view. And then he slowly came back, slowly started responding. And at first people had to open his mouth and pour. When they took him out of Patalinga, he was so oblivious to the body that when he was offered food, he didn't take it. So they took the Abhisheka milk from the mother's shrine, from a Pitaka Chambal shrine in the Arunacheshwara temple. They took the Abhisheka milk from her shrine and they brought it to him, and they had to open his mouth and slowly pour it into his mouth in order to nourish the body and sustain the body. So he was so completely unaware of all these things. Later on, we saw he became slightly more responsive to the world, and then slightly more responsive. And finally, for many years, he was living as if he was just like anyone else. So these are, but all these differences, Bhagavan said, they're all differences only in the view of the onlooker. From his perspective, the moment he was swallowed by that pure awareness, nothing other than pure awareness existed. So He was that. And there's no differences in Brahman. That is, the knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. In Brahman, there are no differences. All differences appear only in the view of the mind. So it's only in the view of our outward-looking mind that we can describe different states of jnana and so on. This is all according to the physical activities of the body, which, as Bhagavan said, it's all according to the prarabdha of that body. But Bhagavan also said for Vijnani there is no prarabdha. So is that a contradiction? No, because for Jnani there's also no body. So all these are relative to the body that exists only in the view of the Ajnani, not in the view of the Jnani. Bhagavan in Anubandham, later on, we come across a verse where Bhagavan compares the state of a jnani to a person sleeping in a cart. Just like a person sleeping in a cart is not aware whether the cart is moving or standing still, or whether the bullocks have been unyoked. Likewise, the jnani is not aware of the activity, the sleep, or the nishta of the body. So it's all, from Bhagavan's point of view, there are no differences whatsoever. Regarding the term Sahaja Samadhi, generally Bhagavan used the term Sahaja Samadhi for the final state. That is, when ego is completely destroyed. Sahaja means what is natural. So our natural state of just being, that is Sahaja Samadhi. However, he also sometimes talked about the practice of Sahaja Samadhi. In the Avatarike, the introduction he wrote for his translation of Dritrisya Viveka, he talks about the practice of Sahaja Samadhi, and he describes it quite. He gives a beautiful description of it. I said, I'll just get that. He says, Purva samskaratinal at totratil ulla drishtiye niki. That is, removing the sight from this appearance, which appears by the purva samskaras. Niki means setting us aside or removing it. Taneye, oneself alone. Bahyanta drishti bedam indri. Without the drishti beda, without the difference in seeing, bahya or antara, inside or outside. So without the distinction of inside and outside, epodum nadam. So nadam means attending, always attending to oneself, without the distinction of seeing inside or outside, having removed this one's sight from this appearance, which appears by the purva samskaras. Podam nadam sahaja samadhi parakatal, by the practice of sahaja samadhi, which is always attending to oneself without this this difference of seeing inside or outside. Avaranam ningave, when that arvana, that basic ignorance, that basic form of maya, the veiling, that is the false awareness, I am this body, which conceals our real identity as just the pure I am, that will be removed. And he goes on to describe it. So here he talks clearly about Sahaja Samadhi Parakatal. That means by the practice of Sahaja Samadhi. And the practice of Sahaja Samadhi is always attending to ourselves. Why does he say it's Bahya Antara Drishti Bedamindri, without the difference in seeing inside or outside? So long as we're looking outside, in other words, so long as we're attending to anything other than ourselves, we need to be told to look within. But when we actually look within, we go beyond that difference of inside or outside. So we need to attend to ourselves so keenly, but we go beyond this this distinction of inside and outside. So attending to ourselves so keenly, but we go beyond this distinction of inside and outside. That is the practice of Sahaja Samadhi. And that alone will remove this fundamental ignorance, this avarana, the veiling, which the concealing of our real nature. What conceals our real nature is ego, the false awareness, I am this body.
Thank you, Michael. I was hoping you would quote the Avatarike from Drigdishi Viveka,
Yeah.
and you did. So next question was all emailed
But
to me.
though here he talks about the practice of Sahaja Samadhi, generally when he talks about Sahaja Samadhi, he's talking about the state of Vijnani, in which there are no differences whatsoever. The differences are differences that appear only in the ignorant view of the Ajnani, who sees the Jnani as a body. But as Bhagavan often said, Jnana me Jnani. Jnana alone is the Jnani. And Jnana means pure awareness. What knows pure awareness is only pure awareness. Jnani means what knows pure awareness. Jnana is pure awareness. So Jnana me Jnani means what knows pure awareness alone is what knows pure awareness. So Bhagavan is nothing but that pure awareness, that Suddha Chaitanya, that Sat Chit, in which there are no differences whatsoever. All differences appear only in the view of ego.
Thank you, Michael. So next question was emailed to me a couple of days ago. Dear Michael, heartfelt thanks for your tireless efforts to help us understand Bhagavan's teachings and practice. It's a great blessing for us all, you included. I have an adult son who has Down syndrome. I naturally have strong bonds of love for him, having had custody and care of him and all his special needs since his birth. He lives in a group home where he's happy and there's wonderful staff. However, due to poor management, he is in danger of losing those who, along with his mom and me, are his security and almost his whole world, which is utterly small. His whole life is dependent on the goodwill of others, and I'm deeply concerned by what is happening around him now. We have always had to act and fight for his well-being and his rights. Now it has come to a head, and there are great risks to his health and well-being. Now we are forced to fight again. I have to talk, explain, and write to administrators and politicians. I have to use my mind for the fighting. My mind is a maelstrom of thoughts and emotions. I'm unable to perform Atma-vichara. My body is exhausted. My muscles are tense, and anxiety is preventing me from sleeping. I try to give up and think of concepts like trust in God, let God do the thinking, but soon thoughts and anxieties overwhelm me again. I have tried watching my breath and doing mantra japa, also with the japamala, but these don't even give me momentary rest. I'm unable to find a way to calm down. The only thing that makes me still for a while is the prayer, thy will be done. My question is, how can we practice surrender when we need it most? Can you give us some practical advice that we can use in everyday life during a crisis?
Well, first, I'm very sorry to hear about the condition of your son. I had an aunt who was similar. She was lived all her life in care homes, and she was taken care of, but sometimes there were problems in the care home, and for some funding problems or something, and they had to, whenever there was any change in her environment, whenever her carers changed, it was a big turmoil for her. So I very much sympathize with what you're going through. However, Bhagavan has a plan for all of us. Sometimes we all face difficulties in life, but sometimes out of those difficulties, some good will come. So we should never lose hope. Sometimes when things seem bleakest, other times, but bring forth the best solutions. Regarding your problem, a problem of dealing with your own mind, we all have to deal with our mind. I mean, the mind is the obstacle we all face in following this path, because we have strong Vishaya vasanas, and under the sway of these Vishaya vasanas, we tend to go outwards and get agitated and all these things. The only way to overcome these is patient and persistent abhyasa. Sometimes it may seem, when we're facing particular difficulties, particularly intense difficulties like you're facing now in your life, it may seem the time when it's most difficult or even impossible to practice Atma-vichara. Still, we should keep on trying, because there's no other solution. This is the only way. And surrender to Bhagavan and Atma-vichara are not two different things. Bhagavan has clearly defined in the 13th paragraph of Nana what it means to give ourselves wholly to God. He says, Anma chintane tavira vera chintane kalambavitaku satram idam kodamol atmanishta paranai iripade tannai isanaku alipadam. That Atmanishta Paranai Iripade Tanna Isanaku Aripadam means being as Atmanishta Paran is giving oneself to God, alone is giving oneself to God. Being as Atmanishta Paran means being one who is firmly established as oneself. In other words, being as we actually are. Being as we actually are means not rising as ego. How to avoid rising as ego is what he indicates in the first clause of the sentence. Anma chintane tavira, vera chintane kalambadriku satram idam kadamal. Not giving even the slightest room to the rising of any thought other than the thought of oneself. Thought of oneself means self-attentiveness. In other words, being so keenly self-attentive, but we give no room to the rising of any other thought. When no other thoughts rise, that is, whenever ego rises, it rises along with other thoughts. So whenever other thoughts don't rise, ego also doesn't rise. So it means being as we actually are without rising as ego. This is what we're aiming for. We all fail in our attempts to be as we actually are, but just because we fail, we shouldn't give up, because we never really fail. The very fact that we are failing, we wouldn't fail if we didn't try. So if we feel that we're failing, at least we know we're trying. So keep on trying. We will sooner or later succeed. As far as the external difficulties are concerned, Bhagavan says in the next sentence of that same paragraph, however much burden is placed on God, he will bear all of it. So even the burden of thinking, we should surrender that burden to him. We may not be able to, we may want to, but find that we're unable to, but we should try to, by clinging firmly to self-attentiveness. So there's no easy way out. We simply have to patiently and persistently try to be self-attentive as much as possible. This is the only way. All these other things, japa and prayer and all these things, these are all supportive, but none of them in their efficacy is far, far, far less than the efficacy of being self-attentive. So even if we're only able to be self-attentive for a moment here and a moment there, that has greater efficacy than any amount of other sadhanas. Because other sadhanas, for example, if we fix our name on our mind on the name of God, that prevents our mind going after other things. So we weaken we weaken the share of ourselves. That's how the mind is purified by bhakti. But we are still clinging to something other than ourselves. So still the mind is free to go outwards, even if only to a name of God. But what is the real nature of God? God is, though, so long as our mind is going outwards, God may appear in name and form. But ultimately, what God actually is our own being. So as Bhagavan says in verses 8 and 9 of Upadesha Undiyar. In verse 8, he says, rather than Anya Bhava means meditation on what is other. In the context, it implies meditating on God as if God is something other than ourselves. In other words, meditating on a name or form of God. Rather than that, Ananya Bhava, that means meditating on what is not other, meditating on ourself alone, with the understanding he is I. He doesn't literally say with the understanding. He says Ananya Bhava, in which he is I. That implies meditating on nothing other than ourself with the understanding that he is I. So we're meditating on nothing other than I. That is anatinam uttamam. That is best among all. In the context, best among all means that is the most effective means to purify the mind. And it's not only the most effective means to purify the mind, it's also the only means to destroy the mind ultimately. Then in the next verse, verse 9, he goes on to say, Bhava Balatinal, by the strength of meditation. In the context, that implies by the strength of that Ananya Bhava. In other words, by the strength of the self-attentiveness, attending to nothing other than oneself, by that strength, Bhavana Tita Satbhavatu Irukale, being in Satbhava. Satbhava means the state of being which transcends bhavana. Bhavana in this context means any form of meditation that is a mental activity. In other words, meditating on anything other than ourselves, this state of being transcends that. Being in that state of being is parabhakti tattva. That is the nature or the reality of supreme devotion. So being self-attentive is supreme devotion to God. So we just have to keep on trying. We all fail. We shouldn't let failure stop us persisting, because Bhagavan has made it clear, if we persevere, we will surely succeed. In the 10th paragraph, he says, however great a sinner one may be, if instead of lamenting, oh, I'm a sinner, how can I be saved? If one sets aside even the thought that one is a sinner and clings firmly to Swarupa Dhyana, self-attentiveness, one will certainly be reformed. So, however hopeless our situation may seem to be, we should persevere in trying. And regarding your son, Bhagavan already has a plan for him. Bhagavan knows what is best. If whatever difficulties are not arising randomly, whatever difficulties we face in life are difficulties given to us by Bhagavan for some purpose. So let us not be downhearted by all these difficulties. Let us do what has to be done. But let us not feel, I am doing this, I have to do this. Let us leave it to Bhagavan. Let him make us do whatever needs to be done, whether it's writing to politicians, meeting healthcare officials, whatever it may be. Take it as Bhagavan is doing all that. Bhagavan is making you do all that. You hold on to Bhagavan in your heart, where he's ever shining as I. He will take care of everything.
Thank you, Michael. Sarah, now we'll come to today's question. Sarah, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Kumar. Hello, everyone. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
So, Michael, my question is about what was discussed today, specifically this issue that I face, at least, is when I focus or I concentrate um, on myself, I do tend to focus on the body. Like I have these. See, the problem is that the human mind, there are certain concepts that a human mind cannot understand, specifically that of a formless, nameless God, and especially because we're so used to the imagery of Bhagwan. And so when I think of the heart with a capital H,
Yes.
I do tend to focus on the right side of my chest. Now the problem is that if a human mind cannot perceive certain things, then how is it that we can even begin to imagine what the self is like, or what pure awareness, pure consciousness would be like? So then, is it that all people begin with these ideas of a physical thing, something that is, in time and space, and move on to that formlessness eventually? um, or is it that you can't even get started till you know and understand that you can't focus on any specific part of the body? Or when you think of pure awareness or pure consciousness, or try to shift your attention to that, you have to go beyond the physical.
Right. Um, Correct understanding is very important to put Bhagavan's teachings into practice. If we do not understand correctly, we will not be able to practice correctly. So it's very important to understand correctly. Anything physical is an object, something that is known by us. We need drisya viveka. We need to distinguish the knower from the known, the seer from the seen. So whatever is known by us as an object is something other than ourself. What we have to attend to is ourself alone. Regarding pure awareness, Bhagavan hasn't asked us to know anything, but we do not already know. Bhagavan often said, if jnana were a new knowledge to be attained, what comes newly will go. So if jnana were a new knowledge to be attained, it would come and it would go. But jnana is not a new knowledge to attain. It's what is ever shining. It's ever shining in our heart as eye. The problem is not that we don't know ourselves, but that we know ourselves as something other than what we actually are. So this false awareness, I am this body, obscures our awareness of ourselves as we actually are. But even when we are aware of ourselves as I am this body, I am Sarah, I am Michael, I am whoever, we don't cease to be aware I am. So the heart is that I am. So you cannot be aware I am Sarah, I am this body, without being aware I am. So what we are trying to do is to separate ourselves from everything else by holding on to this I am alone, holding on to our own being. Yes, it is subtle, but it is something that we all know. The one thing that we know more clearly than any other thing is I am. We couldn't know any other thing without first knowing I am. Whatever else we know, who knows it? I know it. So the awareness of I is ever present. So what we have to try to do is to try to hold on to that awareness I. But this is, so we need to have a clear understanding of what we're trying to do. We also need to bear in mind that this Bhagavan referred to this practice as vichara, Vichara means investigation. He also used many other verbs in Tamil that mean investigate. Nadu, Ri, and so many other words. It means investigate. That is, we are seeking to know something. He also used the word tedu. Tedu means to seek, but it's not seeking something that isn't known. We're seeking to know clearly what is already known. So this is an investigation. The more we practice, the clearer the way will become. So we need to first understand we are not to attend to any object. We are to attend to the subject, to the one who knows all these objects. So we need to have a clear understanding of what we're trying to do. And then when we try to do it, as we go deeper and deeper in the practice, it becomes clearer and clearer to us. So this is why it is emphasized, Sravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Sravana means attentively listening to Bhagavan's teaching, listening in a metaphorical sense, that is paying close attention to what Bhagavan has actually taught us. And in order, then we need, merely hearing the words is not enough. We need to make sense of the words. So to make sense of what Bhagavan says, we need to think about it carefully. We need to try to understand what it is that Bhagavan is saying. So that is the manana, thinking carefully and trying to make sense of it all. And applying it in practice is the nididhyasana. The more we apply it in practice, the more clarity we'll get. The more clarity we'll get, the more when we attend to what Bhagavan is saying, the more meaning we will see in it, the more implication we'll see in it, the more depth of meaning we'll see in it. The more depth of meaning we'll see in it, the deeper our manana will go. And the deeper our manana will go, the deeper we'll be able to go in our nididhyasana. So these three go on hand in hand. It's not that first you do Sravana, then you leave Sravana and do Manana, then you leave Manana and do Nididhyasana. It's not like that. It's an iterative process. If we truly do this Sravana properly, we can't listen to we can't pay attention to what Bhagavan is saying without thinking about it and making sense of it. And we can't think about what he's saying, making sense of it, without attending to what he's talking about. What is Bhagavan talking about constantly? What are all his teachings pointing at? They're pointing at I. So if we do Sravana correctly, that will merge into Manana. And the Manana done correctly will merge into Nididhyasana. So it's a seamless process. But this is a path of we are seeking clarity. Bhagavan in many verses talks about seeking clarity. In the third verse of Arunachala Navamani Malai, he said, those who are always seeking clarity, that clarity is to be found in our own heart. And to guide us to find that clarity in our own heart, we have Bhagavan's teachings pointing us in the right direction.
So then what relevance does the fact of a heart center or the fact of Bhagwan being the light within, what does that have to do with vichara?
Heart, if we understand it correctly, is the awareness I am. That is what we are investigating. If you by heart center, you mean a place in the body, that has absolutely no spiritual significance whatsoever. It's just an observable fact. We feel ourselves to be centered in this. Relative to this body, we feel ourselves to be centered here. It's a mundane fact. The body is a mundane phenomenon. So any fact about the body is mundane. So it's a mundane fact. It has no spiritual significance at all. That's why Bhagavan emphasized it in these verses we talked about today. It is not any part of this physical body which is jada like a stone and which is perishable. The heart is eternal. This body is temporary. So how can the eternal heart be part of the temporary body? It makes no sense at all. What Bhagavan means by heart is what is I. He says to Arunachala, you, because you're always shining, you're always dancing in the heart as I, they say your name is heart. So heart is Atma-swarupa. Heart is the pure awareness I am. That is what we are investigating. Who am I?
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Sarah. So next question, it came as a direct message to me, so I'm assuming questioner wishes to be anonymous. There are two quotes from the book Mahayoga by Lakshmana Sharma. The first quote is, he purchased a ticket and got into the train at Madura. But as soon as he had taken his seat, he fell into the egoless state and was in it nearly all the time. And then the second quote, soon after coming to Tiruvannamalai, as a result of his continuous experience of the egoless state, I'm assuming he fell into that state again, is what he's trying to say. So in the next paragraph, his view about enlightenment of Bhagavan, meaning Lakshmana Sharma's view about enlightenment of Bhagavan, is obviously different from the common narrative that it happens in a split of a second during the death experience that he had as a schoolboy. Lakshmana Sharma was very close to Ramana and studied with him. So the question to you is, what do you think is the reason for such a big difference in his view about this event? Can Lakshmana Sharma be a trusted source of Bhagavan's teachings and biographical events?
Bhagavan himself once said to Lakshmana Sharma, according to the purity of the Antakarana, the same teaching reflects in different ways. The Antakarana means the inner instrument, that is the mind, which is said to be consist of 4 functions, that is manas, or mind, buddhi, or intellect, chittam, or will, and ahankara, or ego. These 4 make up the what is called the Antakarana. So according to the purity of the Antakarana, the same teaching reflects in different ways. Lakshmana Sharma was a good devotee. How deep he went into the practice of what Bhagavan taught, I would be slightly doubtful, because he doesn't actually, though he explains many things nicely, he doesn't explain the practice particularly clearly. He talks about the quest of the self, or whatever it is. It's just the terms he uses don't show much insight into what the practice actually is. The term quest means as if we're looking for something that we don't know. But the whole point Bhagavan made is we always know. There's never a moment when we don't know ourselves. The problem is not that we don't know ourselves, but that we know ourselves as something other than what we actually are. So all we need to do is to know ourselves as we actually are. The ignorance in the form of ego, the false awareness I in this body, will thereby be removed. That's one thing. Secondly, there was a lot of confusion in early days, because though Bhagavan sometimes answered questions about what happened in Madurai or things, generally Bhagavan didn't talk much about himself. So people had different understandings of what Bhagavan's state was. For example, many people interpret the first couple of verses of Arunachala to mean that Bhagavan didn't actually do the final inquiry until he came to Arunachala and saw the form of Arunachala. But Bhagavan later, in the later years of his life, Bhagavan made it very clear. He said, the sun that rose in Madurai is the same sun that has continued to shine here ever since. In other words, what happened in Madurai on that day in Madurai when that fear of death came, that was final. Bhagavan made that clear in many ways, but only he made it particularly clear in the later years of his life, because many people had confused ideas about it. Nathananda once told me that is once when Sadhu Om and I visited Nathananda, and we were talking various things, and Sadhu Om remarked that in the later years of his life, Bhagavan, particularly in the last few years of his life, Bhagavan would occasionally point out inaccuracies in the biographies. And Nathananda agreed, yes, particularly in the last few years, he pointed out. But some of these things he had pointed out earlier, but most people didn't pay heed to it or didn't hear it. So Nathananda said it wasn't only in the last few years, but particularly in the last few years, Bhagavan was more inclined to point out inaccuracies in the biographies, which he did before, but didn't do so much. So during Bhagavan's lifetime, not everyone had a very clear idea about when Bhagavan actually, I mean, whether what happened in Madurai, whether that was final or whether it was only after coming to Tiruvannamalai that it happened. So maybe Lakshman Sharma wasn't very clear on that point. I don't know. But when he talks about the egoless state means the state of jnana. But the state of jnana is not something that you go into and come out of. So once ego is destroyed, it's finished. So we can't talk about the egoless state. Is a fitting description only of the state where ego is absolutely annihilated. Otherwise, we can say every night I slip into the egoless state. Yes, in a sense, it is true. Sleep is the egoless state. There's no ego in sleep, but we don't generally refer to slipping into the egoless state when we fall asleep and rising from the egoless state when we wake up. We could say it like that, but that wouldn't be a very... Generally, the word egoless state, which is a term that Lakshman Sharma was very fond of using. He uses it a lot in Mahayoga. It's best to understand that as referring to the state of jnana, which is permanent. There's no coming and going there. So Lakshman Sharma's understanding was a lot better than many other people who were with Bhagavan, but it wasn't as deep as I mean, he could have had a deeper and clearer understanding than he had, but we have to appreciate his efforts to try to understand Bhagavan's teachings. And Mahayoga, there are many nice things there, and his Tamil commentary on Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu was in those days the best explanation that was available of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, because he had studied Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu under Bhagavan's guidance. But even then, in his commentary on Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, there are places where it's not so clear, where he doesn't really grasp the point.
Thank you, Michael. Bruce, see your hand raised.
Yeah, I sent you a comment, Kumar. It was more directed for Sarah, that little or no, it wasn't Sarah, it was the woman whose child was with Down syndrome. And I said, that quote from the Mary Poppins musical, and the spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine go down is that little bit of Atma-vichara that Michael was saying. It helps us go through those difficult tasks. Yeah. I mean, I have some other questions, but I'm not quite formulated with them.
Okay, that's fine. Last question for today. Go ahead, Rao.
Namaskaram, Michael.
Namaskaram.
The question or one comment is, whenever I do Atma-vichara, like you said, when I investigate who I am, somehow the mind or whatever is doing the investigation goes to that middle point of the chest, maybe 2 inches to the right or what have you. But that I also observed, and I just can't figure out why that happens, but naturally it gravitates towards that point.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention
I mean, that may happen, but we need to, this is another example. Sometimes if we suddenly remember to turn our attention back to ourselves when we've been engaged in other things, and suddenly we notice our attention has been on other things we've not attended to ourselves, we turn our attention back to ourselves. We can sometimes feel something there, but we shouldn't be distracted by that. Because any sensation we feel in the chest is something that has appeared. Whatever has appeared will also disappear, and it's therefore not I. We are trying to investigate what we ourselves actually are. What we ourselves actually are is ever existing and shining. So whatever appears and disappears is something other than ourselves. So to whom does this awareness of 2 digits to right from the center of the chest, to whom does that appear? We turn our attention away from that phenomenon back towards ourselves.
Okay. Makes sense. Makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So,
being aware of anything other than ourselves is a distraction. So whatever, as Bhagavan said, whatever may appear, to whom does it appear? That's it doesn't mean that we ask the question to whom, but we remember whatever appears, it appears to me. So we turn our attention back towards ourselves.
Right. You made the comment, anything other than ourselves, we should not be distracted. One of that was going to be one of the questions, follow-up questions I had here written down is, I don't know what myself is. So I'm doing the investigation who I am, but
who doesn't
when
know?
I get to the point,
who doesn't know?
Well, that's,
I don't know. So you do know I. Anything other than I is not yourself. Anything that appears or disappears is not yourself. You are what is constant. The constant background to all appearances is what you actually are.
Okay.
What is the one thing that we're always aware of? Not only in waking dream, even in sleep, we are always aware I am. We're aware of our own being.
Okay.
It may not be so clear to us now, but we all clearly aware I am, but what is not clear is that this I am is so in our experience, it's so conflated with the adjuncts, with this body and mind, that it seems difficult for us to distinguish it. But we can distinguish it. We do know this body, this mind, everything, all the things that appear and disappear. To whom do all these things appear and disappear? That is what we need to find out. That is why Bhagavan called this investigation.
Got it. One of the other follow-ups is, whenever I'm doing the meditation, sitting down, doing the investigation, some thoughts are pretty fleeting. They come and go. They don't make an impact. There are some thoughts which come and sweep me out with a lot of emotion, and it takes time for me to come back, settle down, and renew my investigation process. I guess I'm just talking it aloud. I'm not asking a question there. I'm just telling you what I'm.
You are telling us what everyone experiences.
Okay.
When we're trying to hold on to our fundamental awareness, I am, sometimes we're able to hold on to it. Other things, though they appear, they don't distract us. We're able to, sometimes we get distracted and we have to bring it back again. This is what the process is all about.
The thing which
However
hurts
many
me,
times our attention gets diverted away from ourselves, there's just one thing we have to do: turn it back towards ourselves. And having turned it back towards ourselves, we try to hold on to that self-attentiveness. But it will slip away again sooner or later, and we again try. That's why Bhagavan describes that process very beautifully in the 6th paragraph of Nana. However many thoughts arise, so what? As and when each thought arises, it's necessary to investigate to whom. If we investigate to whom, it'll be clear to me. If we hold on to that me, if we investigate who am I, the mind will return to its source, its birthplace. And by practicing and the thought that has arisen will subside. By practicing and practicing in this manner, for the mind, the strength to remain firmly abiding in its source will increase. So this is the practice we have to do. However many times our attention gets diverted away from ourselves, we need to bring it back to ourselves. We need to try to hold on to the self-attentiveness until sooner or later we'll find it slipped away again, and we again try. This is the practice, and this is by persevering in this practice, this is how we gain the skill to be as we actually are. The skill to be in Sat-Bhava.
the thing which hurts me the most is the progress. Am I making any progress? And such. My wife, who sees me all the time, says I haven't made.
Did Bhagavan ask you to investigate whether you're making progress? Bhagavan asked you to investigate who you are. Forget about progress. Progress can only be for what you are not. For what you are, there is no progress. We are investigating not... Progress is for ego, but not for what we actually are. We are trying to investigate what we actually are. We're investigating our being. So don't worry about progress. So long... When Bhagavan was asked, is there any sign of progress? Bhagavan said, perseverance is the only real sign of progress. So keep on persevering, don't worry about progress. So long as you're persevering, you're progressing. But don't give progress a second thought, because progress is something other than yourself.
Okay. Thanks for the perseverance comment there.
Yeah.
Surrender, like you said before, surrender really means same as Atma-vichara.
Well, we can surrender our likes and dislikes and so on to some extent without self-investigation. But we can surrender ego, the one who has all the likes and dislikes, only by self-investigation. So self-investigation is the pinnacle of the path of surrender.
Okay.
The pinnacle of the path of bhakti is surrender, because the highest form of love for God is to give oneself to God. And the pinnacle of the path of surrender is vichara, because it's only by vichara that we can give ourselves to God.
Got it.
So this is the true bhakti marga.
Gotcha.
I have a question, and maybe Michael can comment on it, relating to Ram, what he was just saying. I don't know if it's okay to ask.
Yes, okay.
I get the impression from what Ram is saying that he ritualizes his self-practice, right? I know that he has built a puja room, and he goes to that room to meditate. And so all of these things are a very externalized form of practice. And And, given that Bhagavan has already given us a hierarchy of practice in terms of self-investigation, that this questioning of an externalized practice might be something that because like for his example, his asking the question about progress, it makes sense in the context of an externalized practice that you would want to see progress. But if we're turning that investigation more inward and not creating some ritualized externalized practice, it might be more direct and effective. That's basically my question to you, Michael, and my response to Ram.
Well, I can't really comment on that because Bhagavan has shown us what we need to do. We need to turn our attention back towards ourselves. What is the most helpful, what helps us to turn our attention towards ourselves, we each have to find for ourselves. This is an investigation. So for the words and the external comments and everything, someday maybe Ram will say what you have said is useful. He alone can judge whether what you say is useful. But ultimately, we've each got to find what works best for ourselves. We don't need any external, I mean, we can be investigating ourselves, whatever our external circumstances.
Right. That's more my point. Right.
Whatever may be happening around us, whatever we may be doing, we are always aware I am. So our aim should be to attend to I am constantly. Of course, none of us are attending to ourselves constantly, but that is what we should be aiming for. That's why when Bhagavan defined what is Atma-vichara, he said, Sadakalamam manate atma-vilvetirapatu. Keeping the mind always fixed on oneself. Not that Bhagavan expected us to all of a sudden be able to fix our mind constantly on ourselves. That is what we should be aiming for. And he said in the 16th paragraph, he said that. In the 11th paragraph, he said, Oravan tan sarupa madeyam varayil, nirantara sarupa smarane kai patruvanayan adu andre podam. Until one attains Swarupa, if one holds fast to uninterrupted Swarupa Smarana, self-remembrance, that alone is sufficient. So he said they're uninterrupted. Of course, self-remembrance is constantly interrupted. So Bhagavan doesn't expect us to be all uninterruptedly attending to ourselves, but that is what we should be aiming for. So we need to, as we proceed on this path, we will find the external aids of less and less help. But some people find certain external aids helpful. Fine, that's okay. These things will drop off in due course. Just like ripe fruit drops from a tree, all the supports that we find useful at one time will later on drop off.
Thank you. That was great.
Thanks.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. So very good. With that, we'll conclude today's session, and see you again next month, Michael, for verse 25 of Anubandham.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Namo Ramanaya.
Namo Ramanaya.